John, don't pretend like you're not interested in this chat.
No, I'm just pretending I'm not interested in this chat.
Oh, after last week's disaster, yeah, it's fully charged.
Wasn't a disaster. Nobody noticed.
Shut open.
Oh, sorry. Oh. Is it that time already?
This is why I wanted video of John. A black screen would be no use.
What are you going to do with that video now?
They can't see me, that's okay.
Welcome to Moviescramble.
Good morning, Vietnam! I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Roads? And we don't need roads. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Batman. I am the father. Billy Batson. I choose you as champion.
Hello?
Say my name so my powers may flow through you.
But I don't know your name, sir.
Shazam.
Wait, for real? Say, okay! Shazam?
And good evening all, and welcome back to the Moviescramble podcast. I believe it's this episode 6 we're on already.
It is, yep.
How did that even happen? You know, this is a podcast I said wouldn't last one episode, and now we're on 6 episodes. Absolutely fantastic. It's just a shame we've not got an unbroken streak of us all being on, but John's been on every single podcast so far.
He has the most
Yes, I have.
IMDb credits, yep.
Yes. And John, how about you?
I'm very well. In sunny Aberdeen today for a wee change, and it's all very nice up here. Lovely sunny weather, and looking forward to a nice chat.
Do you see, is it really sunny? Because it's miserable down here.
It is. It's been very nice. I kind of went through a bit of rain earlier on, but no, it's been lovely here. East Coast and all that makes a difference.
I'm not a big fan of the East Coast. Mary, how about you?
I mean, I think we've established that I'm hungover to fuck, so my contribution to this podcast is going to be the bare minimum.
Why break the habit a lifetime? So, on to that. Yeah, I'm back, bitches. In tonight's podcast, we are going to be discussing Shazam, which has just been recently released on DVD, Blu-ray, home video, however you watched up in the house. And John's got his shirt open again, and I'm
He's getting in the mood. He's thinking Zachary Levi. He's getting aroused. He's getting the chest out.
yeah. And if you're wondering why I used the word again, there, it was prior to recording. John was, I'm not gonna lie, he was stripping off.
Yeah.
He's into the Free the Nipple campaign, yep.
So, we're going to discuss Shazam, directed by David F. Sandberg. It was the latest installment in the DCEU. Starring Zachary Levi, it tells a story of a young child, Billy Batson, who develops superpowers. And in a little similar story to the film Big, that you might be familiar with, he grows from a teenage kid into a Superman-style superhero. The problem is, he's still a kid in his mind and at heart, and he's got a lot of lessons to learn when it comes to being a superhero. I loved this film when I went to see it. I thought it was so much fun. It was really, really funny. Mary, I believe you have an opinion on this film.
I mean, I have an opinion on Zachary Levi, but that's kind of probably not suitable for the podcast, given that John's already got a nipple out. I absolutely love this. I think it's case in point that you don't have to do superhero films very seriously all the time in order for them to be a success and for them to be enjoyable. I thought there was lots of lovely nods to, as you said, like Big and even Rocky, because they do the sort of training session when he's learning to use the lightning. And I thought that the performances were absolutely great. Obviously, Zachary Levi was just having a good time playing the superhero who's essentially just a big kid. And Jack Dylan Grazer playing Freddie Freeman was really fantastic as well. Of course, Mark Strong playing the villain. You can't beat a bit of Mark Strong snarling and being that sort of classic English bad guy on screen. There were so many laugh out loud moments, really well-rounded characters, and just good fun. It was pure escapism. And as I said, it's just case in point that you don't have to do the Dark Knight every time in order to have a really well-made superhero film.
John, you enjoyed that, I believe, yeah?
Yeah, I thought it was another fantastic entry into the DC universe. They seem to be on a bit of a run just now with obviously doing the likes of Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and this followed on quite nicely from it. I like the way at the start of the film that it started off with a very dark tone. It was very onerous, very introspective, I'll say, but yeah, you get introduced to the antagonist first, which is a kind of a trope that you get with a lot of superhero films these days. And then once that's all finished, it just goes, nah, I'm not going to do that. Let's just have fun. And it's really, really upbeat from there. The music changes. It gets very light. You're introduced to Billy Batson in the very opening scene where he steals a policeman's lunch, of all things. I'll back you up on Zachary Levi. I thought he was fantastic. He plays a great teenager. He is really good in that role. I also thought that Mark Strong was excellent, and it was all the things about the film. Like there was a sequence where it was him and Freddie, and they were discussing what his superhero name was going to be. Now, Freddie, as a character, is he's almost like a spirit guide, because he deals with, he knows about all the lore of Superman and obviously Batman and everybody sort of surrounding in the DC universe. So that's a kind of a way into DC universe as well. But he knows about all this stuff, but he deliberately starts calling him like Captain Sparkle Fingers and things like that, which was just brilliant. And Thundercrack, Thundercrack was just my favourite, because Shazam just turns around and goes, dude, wait, what? Come on, you can't do that. I just thought, yeah, it was splendid, and it was fun, and it was exactly what you need from a film, especially one that's not trying to continue a universe.
There's a moment in the film as well where I've never heard so many people in the cinema choke on whatever they were eating and drinking. It's when the demon Honsu, apologies for the pronunciation, character says, "Put your hand on my staff and say my name." I think everyone just about buckled. It was brilliant, and there were so many wee one-liners and little moments like that, when I think towards the end, when Zachary Levi and Mark Strong's characters are having a sort of square off, but they're quite far apart. And instead of, Mark Strong's giving this really dramatic villain speech, and that's quite a common trope in superhero films, but instead of actually like responding to it, Zachary Levi's like, "What? I can't hear you. You're too far away. I'm sorry. I'm sure this is really important and dramatic and evil, but you're too far away." It was just really turning all the sort of tropes of superhero films on their head and making them a bit more silly and light-hearted.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know really too much about Shazam when the film first got announced. I have read little of the character in the comics. In fact, when I did read him in the comics, it was still called Captain Marvel.
Yep.
And when the film got announced, all I really knew that The Rock was attached to it, but nobody knew if he was going to be playing, it's not Captain Marvel, sorry, Shazam or Black Adam, which is one of his main villains who, this isn't a spoiler, but he's not introduced in this film. So it turns out The Rock will be playing Black Adam in a film still to be made. And this was announced years ago before this film was even in production, which shows you that kind of like crazy ambition that Warner Bros. Has with DCEU. Not dissimilar to Marvel, to be fair, except Marvel have kind of got some good faith banked. With this film, though, as much as I did really enjoy it, I loved it, thought it was great, I thought it was a lot of fun. It's not my favourite DCEU film, and interestingly enough, for a franchise that is constantly ridiculed and berated by critics, this is the lowest grossing entry.
Is it?
Yep. So when a lot of critics were saying stuff like, this is a great film, it's a nice breath of fresh air, it's what DC should be doing, not according to the bank balance.
I'm surprised at that.
No, they've made an extraordinary amount of money off of the previous films. It's even though they've been critically panned, they just made so much cash off of them. That's why they were able to kind of continue, because if you think about it, there's been a few occasions, especially with the MCU, where if a film wasn't successful, it could have spelt real problems for them. Thinking along the lines of maybe Guardians of the Galaxy or Iron Man 2, for instance, if they didn't reach those heights. But with DC, they seem to have this built-in fan base that will go and see whatever comes out on screen.
This film is still quite dark tonally. It still has that Snyder Vision kind of tint to it, you know. But
Yeah,
it's a lot
the whole theme of like the idea that envy is the strongest of all of Mark Strong's demons or whatever they are, and the idea that envy can consume you and how you should brace yourself for that as an adult. That is quite a dark message, and amongst all the kind of fun and nonsense.
And there's a scene, this isn't a spoiler, but I'll speak about it vaguely so that people that have seen it will know the scene. But when Mark Strong takes his little demon emotions into the boardroom,
And
that
yeah,
scene is brutal.
yeah,
Absolutely brutal. And that's one of the things I like about DC is they're not afraid to do stuff like that in spite of critics and their opinions. They're still trying to do that thing. It's a bit different from Marvel. The people could argue that this is them trying to kind of go more kind of Marvel route and more kind of family friendly. It's still, as you said, they're quite a dark film in many, many ways. But the character lends himself to the tone. It's not DCU taking the character Shazam and going, right, this is a brutal, dark, Batman broody character. Let's make him fun. They've picked a character like that and made a film run about. And as you're saying, John, this is more of a standalone film than it is. It is still part of the extended universe. It does make reference to other superheroes. The end credits, especially, the kind of animated Wonder Woman and stuff, that's really, really funny. But it does stand alone, much in the way Aquaman did, and Wonder Woman, to be fair.
Yeah, totally, yes.
And
Yeah,
as you say, Zachary Levi is absolutely outstanding in the role. I
think I said he was a big ride. I didn't actually mention his accent.
He's very likable. He's very charismatic. He's got a great allure to him beyond his obvious talents that Mary seems to be
Talents, is that the word we're going for? Yeah, sure. He looks like he smells good, doesn't he? He just looks like he could snip his neck and it would be amazing.
Now, I didn't actually know much at all about Zachary Levi before this. Did you guys?
Well, he was Flynn Rider in Tangled, and he's in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but I haven't seen Chuck, which he stars in.
I watched Chuck when it was on at the time, and it was really good. It's not a dissimilar character, to be honest. He's an IT help guy, so I was naturally tuned into liking something like that anyway. But it's very funny as well, and it shows his real sort of comedic chops. It's a good series. It kind of tailed off. I think it was like 4 series of it, and it kind of tailed off towards the end because there's only so many episodes you can have of him being an IT guy and a spy at the same time. So it was good, and it was a good way in. But yeah, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel kind of showed off his acting chops a bit as well. I thought he was very good in that. It was a very sort of subtle role. Again, there was an undertone of humour and everything to it, but he showed off a different side of himself. But even in that, he was built like a brick shithouse as well. He was really bulked up in that, whereas in Chuck, he was really skinny and weedy.
Oh yeah, he's a total glow up, and I think like he came out and said he was not annoyed, but people were suggesting that his muscles for Shazam were just the suit, and he was like, no, I refer you to scenes in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or even his own Instagram where he sort of documented his kind of fitness journey. It's definitely all him.
And it's interesting to say that because we actually look in the film, and this will be a deliberate aesthetic reason. It does look like a muscle suit. Compared to, let's say, like Ben Affleck as Batman or Henry Cavill Superman, it does look like he's wearing some kind of like enhanced suit. But I think that's made deliberate because of the comical nature of the character as well.
Yeah, I kind of thought that was kind of part of the joke.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously really a teenage boy, and I kind of felt that was like part of the in-joke of like, oh, well, you just buy inflatable muscles or something like that.
Yeah, it's like the two kids on each other's shoulders with the coat type.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Yeah.
Speaking of good acting chops, though, his villain, as we mentioned, is Mark Strong in the opposing role, who again just looks like he's having so much fun in the role.
He just doesn't know how to have a bad performance, to be perfectly honest. I've seen him in so many films, and he's always good. What I like about Mark Strong is the choices that he makes as well, because he could be quite easily typecast as a villain, and you kind of look at a film that he's in or a television program and you think, oh, is he the bad guy here? So you never really know because of the choices he makes. Sometimes he's good, sometimes he's bad, but He's very, very watchable, really is.
Yeah, I think the problem is when you see him in something and you don't know if he's a bad guy, you just assume he is, as you're saying. But that's because he's such a convincing bad guy. Like anything I watch him in, I think he's going to be the bad guy. He's going to turn at some point. He's going to be the villain, and it's like he's not. I don't think he's typecast as a villain, though. As you said, John, I don't think he's typecast. He's just such a convincing villain. I like to see him as the villain. I will it in his roles, and you get plenty of bad guy stuff from him here. He's great.
Oh yeah, he absolutely purrs every line that he has, and it's that kind of slight snarl of the lip, and he just does make an excellent villain. But Mark Strong's somebody that I've liked right back from like Our Friends in the North, and was it Low Morning Sun, the one set in Edinburgh as well. He's a fantastic actor, and he's made some really cool choices that I think have kind of deliberately kept him out of like big Hollywood features, but he's still a really bankable asset, if we can talk about him in those terms.
Yeah, he's a very solid actor. It's like I don't imagine anybody would. He's not a leading man. You don't see him in leading roles and stuff. But he is a kind of guy that if you see him opposite someone, you think, "Oh, Mark Strong's in that." My interest is piqued. Like I didn't know much about Zachary Levi. I knew he was in Chuck. I didn't watch it. That was about it. I was going to go and see this anyway. Let's be honest. It's a superhero film. It's DC. I'm a total DC fanboy. Knowing Mark Strong's in it, it did pique my interest a little bit more.
Absolutely. I just thought it was a great film, a sort of nice way to sort of kick off blockbuster season, as it were.
All the criticism in me as a whole is that it did fall down that typical superhero rabbit hole in the third act, big CGI villain piece, and I didn't think it really worked well here. In the same way that Wonder Woman didn't really work, and the film was really good up until then, and then got quite generic.
That's the problem that a lot of superhero films have, the third act. They have to put a spectacle on now. If you look at previous two, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, you could probably say that the third act was probably the weakest in those films as well, because it sort of fell back on the, hitting big things or hitting imaginary things, which doesn't really work and it's not really of any interest. Sometimes these films can get away with it, and I think Shazam just about gets away with it because of the way that it tackles the fighting the bad guy in the third act. As you say, we're not going to give anything away, but it does something slightly different, and it actually feels like more of a sort of proper ending to it. But yeah, it is a problem for all these films, let's face it.
Yeah, I suppose you're right there, actually, because at least with Shazam, you've got a very human villain in Mark Strong. Even though he's surrounded by these 7 deadly sin-style demons, he's still a very tangible and physical punching bag.
Yep.
Absolutely. I'm disappointed that Zachary Levi didn't get his kit off.
You could always watch the Shazam Triple X parody, which I'm sure somewhere like.
Well, that was something that the character of Shazam says very early on. He says, when he's asked, what can you do? And he says, I don't even know how to pee in this suit. It's a typical thing that a boy would think of.
And that was one of the biggest strengths for me. I thought the screenplay by Henry Gayden, based on a story by him and Darren Lemke, it did really kind of capture that idea of what a teenage boy would be like with superpowers. He's going to be a bit of a knob. He's going to be a bit arrogant. The scene when he's like, he's on the rocky steps. He's like, lightning in my hands. And he's getting money off people for doing tricks. And this is a world where superheroes exist. We have Aquaman, we have Wonder Woman, we've had Superman, we have Batman. These people exist. People know of them. The Suicide Squad. The world has been saved many, many times, but he is still capitalising on this.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad that one of us sang the lightning in my hands thing, because that is absolutely hysterical. What I also loved as well is the scene where they're blowing up. Like he obviously discovers he can shoot lightning. They're throwing textbooks at him, and he's like, math, social science, and he's just blowing them all up. My sister actually turned around to me. She is a teenager, and she went, that would be me. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what everyone would do. Just get rid of all their responsibilities first.
Yeah, he goes to the strip club and things like that just because he can. And he's buying beer. It's just it is a very good film. I wouldn't mind watching it again. I think I found this with every DC film I've watched. Actually, I've enjoyed it more the second time, apart from Suicide Squad.
I'm going to pass on that. I haven't seen it at all.
It's okay.
That's a whole other conversation to be
It's another
perfectly honest.
podcast completely. If you're interested in us doing a DC and Marvel podcast, please let us know on the social medias.
How old do you sound on the social medias?
I know.
Sounds as old as me.
I know, but you've got that silver fox, open neck, 20 buttons under him thing going on that Sonny doesn't have.
Okay, so I think it's safe to say that I am a fan of this film and it's a recommend for me. John?
Yeah, definitely.
Mary, not just Zachary Levi's package, but the film in general.
Oh yeah, I've pre-ordered the Blu-ray. Buzzing. I loved it.
Did you see that? Yeah, you electrocuted a bus and almost killed these people.
And then I caught it!
I didn't really know much about the Shazam character. Obviously, I'm going to go and see it. I didn't know much about Zachary Levi either. I was a fan of the director, David F. Sandberg, who previously made the horror films Lights Out and Annabelle Creation. Now, I thought Lights Out specifically it was okay. It was good. It was based on a short film. You could tell it was a short film idea. It worked best. It just, when you run it over 90 minutes, I got a bit kind of tired. Annabelle Creation, I think, is one of the best horror films in the last 10 years. And I was very, very intrigued to how it was going to make Shazam. And seeing the trailer, didn't have any horror elements at all. Now, we do mention it as quite dark. Seeing the ballroom, for example, you can see where that kind of horror background comes into it. But this is another example of the trend of big studios taking independent directors and throwing them into multi-million-dollar blockbusters. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The one I can think of that doesn't, most famously, John, you know what I'm going to say?
Well, there's so many to choose from. Oh no, it would be Fantastic Four.
Exactly, Fantastic Four. I was a massive, massive fan of the film Chronicle. Fantastic Four remake, the most recent one, most precise, 2015, is one of the worst films I think I've ever seen. It's atrocious. Now, I don't think it's entirely the director's fault, but it's a really bad film. There is good examples though, and we have selected 3 of our favourite directors who have made the jump seamlessly from independent film to thrown into a blockbuster, usually a franchise, and done quite well. Now, if you think that's a clumsy title for this next segment, that's why it's not been advertised on social media. So we do apologise if we haven't got your thoughts and stuff like that. Now you know what this topic is, you can let us know after the fact. But Mary, you're up first, since you're hungover.
Christ, honestly. So my first pick is just somebody that I absolutely love because I think he's very zany and quirky and has sort of seamlessly made that transition. So it's Taika Waititi. Obviously kind of famous for starting his career in Flight of the Conchords and doing that sort of, really quirky, off-the-wall style comedy. And he sort of slowly moved into sort of, bigger and bigger projects. So I think What We Do in the Shadows came next, which is one of the funniest films I have ever watched. The werewolves, not swearwolves line will stay with me forever. And from there, he did The Hunt for the Wilder People, which again is a really quite catchy, it's Sam Neill in it, so it kind of started to get bigger and bigger casting, kind of a sort of sad, funny, sort of again offbeat kind of drama comedy type thing. And from there, he launched himself into Thor Ragnarok, which for me was one of the absolute standouts in the last stage of Marvel. You've got Immigrant Song, you've got Kate Blanchett as Hela with those gorgeous big dramatic horns, and it's so vibrant and full of colour, but everywhere you look, as much as it's a Marvel film, it's very much a Taika Waititi film. It's really stamped with his sort of personality and style of humour and visuals as well. He obviously has a bit part in that as well as Korg, the guy who just can't organise a revolution. And he's fantastic. He's obviously signed up to direct the next Thor movie, which will see Natalie Portman pick up the mantle. And he's just great. I mean, for me, he can do no wrong. I mean, he's a snappy dresser who loves a pineapple shirt and just he really delivers on everything that he does. I love his sense of humour. He's a very, very clever guy.
I really hope he can do no wrong because he's signed up to do Akira and it actually looks like the project's going to go off the ground after 3 decades. And I am a massive fan of Akira. I'm a big fan of this director. I really hope. I really hope it's a film that I deserve. Just me, specifically.
Just made for Thomas, yeah.
Just for me.
My first choice is Gareth Edwards. Started out as a visual artist after qualifying from uni, and he used those skills very well in the 2010 film Monsters, which is a low-budget sort of sci-fi horror film where a journalist does a favour to a very rich man and go and collect his daughter from a quarantine zone in Central America where these monsters, as they've been termed, have landed from outer space. It's a beautiful film. It's really well done. It's very, very low budget. The monsters of the film, you actually only see them for about 5 minutes. It's almost a case of, like There Will Be Blood without any, there's no blood in There Will Be Blood. It's the same sort of idea. The monsters only appear very briefly in it. It's a cracking movie. And from that, he got the chance to direct Godzilla, the 2014 adaptation of the classic Japanese sci-fi Let's Fear the Bomb movie. It was a partial success. I would say it's a success because I really enjoyed the film, obviously, but I was very biased. I like these type of films anyway. He was able to use his visual stylings and his visual language to great effect in the film. When you saw the initial trailer, when you saw the halo jump scene, and I don't know if you both remember that. It's a fantastic piece of filmmaking. It just looks so good. It's spectacular, and it really made people want to actually see the film. And I think because of that, there was a certain amount of disappointment, mainly because it focused on a human character that wasn't particularly charismatic. And again, there wasn't enough monsters in it for a lot of people, which was obviously remedied in the film from this year. It was a good jump up, and obviously because of that as well, he was able to go on and do Rogue One, but that could be another podcast in itself again.
I wasn't the biggest fan of his Godzilla film, to be honest, for some of the reasons you kind of mentioned there. I do love monsters, though. I think it's an absolutely incredible piece of filmmaking for especially how he made it. You do appreciate the film a lot more when you know the backstory behind it. Take that backstory away, if you just went, this is another indie-style film, you can really enjoy it. It's a very good film. It's a very good story. And I loved Rogue One.
I actually didn't realise, because I obviously wasn't paying attention, that it was the same director that had done all three. But Monsters is something I will now look at, because you've piqued my interest.
It's really good. The sequel, not so much. Which I believe is available in the moviescramble.co.uk archives.
Nice plug. Smooth.
Not, just to be precise there, in case we get sued by any studios. Not the movie, but a review. I am going to go with Colin Trevorrow. He made his feature debut with the low-budget indie comedy Safety Not Guaranteed, starring the absolutely amazing Aubrey Plaza. The film told the story of 3 magazine reporters who respond to a classified ad placed by someone who's looking for a companion to go time travelling with. I actually only seen this film recently. It's really nice. I was expecting more of a comedy. It's not. It's more of a romantic comedy in a lot of ways. And it's just a sweet film, and it's quite sad in many ways. And it's kind of like a tragedy to Mark Duplass's character and things like that. And then after that, he gets signed up to do Jurassic World. Now, the idea of a Jurassic Park 4 has been in development hell for almost as long as Akira, basically. It's kind of one of those films that was always kind of teased, always kind of spoke about, but never did seem to go off the ground. He made this, and I think despite it getting some mixed reviews, it made an absolute fortune. And it is a film that after you get past the hype and the expectation of a new Jurassic Park film, it is really good. It's a cracking spectacle. It's got some amazing action sequences, likeable characters, a great cast, funny scripts. And yeah, I think he pulled it off. I mean, he's took over a franchise that had been languishing, and being killed, to be fair, off by Jurassic Park 3.
No, I totally agree. I think that it sort of brought Chris Pratt to my attention in terms of his sort of acting capabilities, and it was a really enjoyable, again, just a big monster movie. Like, who doesn't like the thought of, it's the classic sort of, the T-Rexes, the Velociraptors, and I'm saying they're like much loved characters, but you know what I mean? There's a bit of nostalgia surrounding Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I mean, I first seen the trailer for it, and you had Chris Pratt talking to raptors, and you see him in the motorbike with this kind of raptor army. I'm like, I don't know if I'm all in or not, because on one hand, this looks ridiculous. And I'm a massive fan of the first Jurassic Park, and I'm just watching this going, Chris Pratt has a raptor army? I'm also like, Chris Pratt has a raptor army. This could be the greatest scene in cinema ever. It wasn't, but it was still good and I enjoyed it.
So I'm going to go for Paul Greengrass as my second choice, just because he's was a fellow journo. So he started out as a journalist and then sort of moved into making kind of made-for-TV movies about real-life events more often than not. And he sort of caught the attention of Hollywood, or whatever you want to call it, when he made Bloody Sunday for Granada TV, sort of segmented his style for that kind of shaky cam, which brought him into the Bourne films. The Bourne films, I think, obviously the books were written in like the 70s, and I think that was something that was touted for a long time to sort of be the American James Bond type of thing. And he really brought a new character to life. Like, I think it's quite hard to launch a character that people are going to be invested in for a franchise, but I feel like he did that with the Bourne films. And obviously from there he went on to do United 93, which absolutely ruined me. Like, it was a horrific cinema trip for obvious reasons. One of the few cinema trips actually where I felt like everyone in the theatre was completely silent for the entire time. It was absolutely just the worst sort of experience ever in a way, but watching it was obviously thoroughly entertaining. It was really well made. Most recently, he has done Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks, obviously telling the story of the man whose ship was invaded by pirates, which gave way to that famous line, "I'm the captain now." But I think he's somebody who's had a really interesting career. You know, he's done the sort of research and fact-finding side of things as a journalist, and sort of made his way sort of naturally into documentaries, which then naturally led to sort of, you know, TV dramas of real-life events, right up into these massive Hollywood blockbusters that he's, you know, quite clearly put his own stamp on. Like, he has quite a distinct style, and I think that if I heard that something was a Paul Greengrass movie, I'd be interested in it as well, just because I quite like the back catalogue. But I thought he was quite an interesting choice. He's had quite a nice sort of varied career.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest. It's not that I don't like the Bourne films. I'm not a big, massive Bourne fan. But I do really like Paul Greengrass. United 93 was a film I had zero interest in. How's he going to pull this off? And I was gripped that entire last half hour. And again, it sounds stupid, and you know what's going to happen. It's like watching Titanic. But I was absolutely gripped watching it, and I'm just like hands over my eyes, going, "Oh no, it just made it so real." And I think because it was so soon as well, that kind of added to the impact of it, and it was just it was a brutal but necessary watch, I think.
For this one, I am going to go with James Gunn. Obviously,
not cancelled.
Uncancelled.
So obviously he started off doing sort of trauma films, very low budget horror with dubious taste, let's say, which obviously got him into a bit of bother later on in his career when previous tweets and jokes were taken in a different context to which they were probably originally aired. But his film just before he hit it big was a film called Super, which was a Rainn Wilson pretend superhero.
It's a really good movie.
Film. It's an excellent movie. Rainn Wilson is particularly good in it. He's a sort of a middle-aged man that has a bit of a crisis and starts dressing up in a sort of Flash-type costume. His catchphrase is "Shut up, crime." And he goes out of his way to try and save people. And as you probably guess, it doesn't go particularly well. It's funny, but it's also kind of brutal as well. There's an awful lot of violence in it that just you don't expect. You're sitting there watching and you go, whoa, what the hell happened there? So from that, obviously, he got the nod from Marvel and went on the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. Now, at the time, obviously, Guardians of the Galaxy wasn't regarded as being a big film within the MCU. In fact, it was a bit of a risk. Most people didn't know the comics, didn't really know the characters. So he was basically given a bit of room to maneuver and do what he wanted to do. And I mean, the product speaks for itself. He kind of knocked it out of the park, and he's set himself up with another 2 sequels, and he's gone on and done a few things since then. Obviously, he did Brightburn as well, so he was involved in Brightburn. He was producing that. But yes, he's obviously hit the big time from there, and it just showed that the lessons that he learned as a young filmmaker he was able to bring that to the screen when he had the money and obviously the backing of a major studio. I just think he's a fantastic director, and the kind of thing that he does is just brilliant.
There is a little Easter egg in Brightburn that suggests it's a shared universe with Super.
Oh, all right, okay.
Yeah, I
Didn't
won't say
catch that.
anything too much. It's right at the end, so I won't say anything else for people that haven't seen it. But that's not a spoiler, by the way, either. I mean, I've seen Super, and I didn't even notice it. I wasn't the biggest fan of Super, to be honest with you, but I agree with everything you said regarding Guardians of the Galaxy. Relatively unknown director, especially for that scale of film for a household name. Now everybody knows who James Gunn is.
Yeah. And everybody knows who Groot is, things like that. So you
Yeah.
can't get away from that, he's obviously done something right.
I am going to go with Scott Derrickson. And the reason I've picked Scott Derrickson as he kind of had two shots. He made his feature film debut with Hellraiser Inferno, which was straight to video. Now, this was the first Hellraiser film in the franchise to go straight to video. It has not been the last. This was the fifth one. To be fair though, it's actually not a bad film. It's pretty good for what it is. It's a low budget horror movie. It is pretty good, and you can tell this guy's got a bit of talent here behind the camera. He followed that up with The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I think is a cracking film.
That is a really good film.
It's one part horror, one part courtroom drama, and he manages to merge the two styles very well. Got a call up for the big leagues with the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is terrible. Even the Keanu Reeves' biggest fans can't really defend that one. So it was back to low-budget horrors for him, where he did Sinister, followed up by Deliverers from Evil, for Marvel to come knocking for Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange is arguably a bigger commodity than, say, the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's more well-known, but probably not that well-known. People might recognise the name, but do they recognise the character? Do they know much about him? Despite being a very under-the-radar hit, Doctor Strange is an absolutely fantastic film. It's visually incredible. It just looks amazing. Cumberbatch is brilliant in it. The whole cast, Tilda Swinton. How this film has not got a sequel before now is baffling to me. I know it's getting one. I know it's been announced recently. This should have had a sequel years ago, in my opinion, or at least one announced. One of the most underrated films in the MCU, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It was like Inception meets the MCU. I thought it was incredible. I thought Mads Mikkelsen was a brilliant villain. And I really enjoyed the way they explored the character and how he sort of slots into things. And I am bursting for the Multiverse of Madness. I can't wait. I thought it was a great film.
Yeah, I very rarely go and see 3D films if I can avoid it, because I don't think the cinemas here are the best for 3D films. That was one film I came out of thinking, I wish I went to see that in 3D.
I don't go and see 3D films because I already have to wear glasses for the cinema, and wearing 2 pairs of glasses just makes me look like a loser.
It's harsh.
I thought it was a fantastic movie. As you say, it was visually a spectacle. And you can't really beat having a bit of Benedict Cumberbatch on screen, let's face it. It's difficult to single it out as far as like sort of MCU films go, but it tried to do something a little bit different and obviously introduced certain Eastern elements with Western actors sometimes, but it still came across very well. And yes, a sequel should have been announced, but I think the reason they didn't do the sequel thing was because there was so many films already on the slate. And I think the way that Marvel operate is if they're bringing a new character in and it doesn't do particularly well, they're not going to announce something straight up. They're going to wait. And obviously Doctor Strange played a big part in Infinity War and Endgame. So he was still very much part of everybody's sort of collective consciousness. So, it might be good that they didn't try to rush one through and obviously just decided, well, we'll do that as part of Phase 4.
I think they're slating Multiverse of Madness as the first Marvel horror film.
Ah, excellent. So Mr. Derrickson will be very well placed for that then.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm really looking forward to it.
I mean, I don't know if there's any Hellraiser fans out there. I'd recommend the 5th one.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. My last choice, again, I feel like I've gone for really obvious ones compared to you guys. My last choice is David Lynch, who I think despite the fact that he's had massive successes, does still have that kind of indie feel to him. He is kind of, he's not mainstream anyway. So obviously kind of first got noticed with Eraserhead, which is this, black and white, sort of moody, kind of offbeat horror type thing, which has become a bit of a cult classic. And then from there moved on to the black and white The Elephant Man. And The Elephant Man always strikes me as something that's super big budget, but apparently I think it was only made for, $5 million or whatever, so it wasn't at the time, and has one of the most endearing John Hurt performances in it. And then apparently after that, he was at the time offered the opportunity to direct Return of the Jedi. So let's all take a moment there to pause and think about what a David Lynch Return of the Jedi might look like. But he turned it down, obviously, to do Dune, which was a commercial flop, but has now been remade with Timothée Chalamet, amongst others. And he's obviously gone on to, Twin Peaks, the series, and the film Fire Walk with Me, Blue Velvet, which is up there with one of my favourite all-time weirdo films. And I remember one time watching it at home, and my mum came in just as the In Dreams sequence came on, and she was like, "Are you watching porn?" It's 2:00 in the afternoon, so probably not. And obviously he's done, Mulholland Drive, which again is a really sort of, his films just, they get under your skin and they really make you think. But he's somebody that, for all the kind of success that he has, he does have that kind of flavour of the indie auteur about him. He's never quite crossed over into the mainstream, but I think he's fantastic. And honestly, the idea of a David Lynch Star Wars movie just tickles me so much.
Yeah, almost as much as a Quentin Tarantino Star Trek movie for me.
My last choice is the Wachowskis. They started off in Hollywood as screenwriters. They wrote the screenplay for the film Assassins, which eventually became a Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas gig, which wasn't particularly good, but I think their original script was changed to quite a large extent. From there, obviously, they developed the idea for The Matrix, and they'd actually sold the idea of The Matrix to Warner Brothers, but Warner's were a bit dubious about them insisting about them actually directing the film and taking the sort of vision forward, considering they were going to be spending something like, I think it was about $80-90 million they were going to be spending on it. So what they asked them to do was to do a low budget film to just show that they could actually do the piece of work. And what they came up with was Bound, an erotic film noir with Gina Gershon, Jennifer Tilly. And it's a very tight, very erotic, and it's a very good film as well.
Can
and
you
it
just
showed
erotic? Maybe undo that button again.
You're obsessed. We can have a private chat later.
Christ.
So,
Oh, you guys are listening or missing out on this. It's free the nipple this episode.
just checking to make sure how many buttons I've actually got undone. So yes, we can cut all this out.
No, we're keeping it in. We're keeping it in.
Yeah, that's what she said.
So anyway, from the success or the success of Bound, they were able to go on and deliver what has become The Matrix and the two mega successful follow-ups. Basically launched their careers and prove to just about everybody that they could actually go on, and they knew how to deal with money, they knew how to deal with actors, and they basically knew how to put a product out on the screen that people wanted to see. And their career since then has been a little patchy, let's say. They've had some good ones and some bad ones. I'm a bit of a Speed Racer apologist. I think that's a fantastic movie. Saw that in the IMAX and I just loved every single minute of it. So it's good memories for me as well for that film. I didn't like some of their output after that to the same extent. It was Jupiter Ascending, which I thought was just a bit silly, but it certainly put them on the map, and I think this is worthy of including in my list.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I agree. It's a very good choice.
Thomas, your last choice.
I'm going to go for who is arguably my favourite director and the man who made, in my opinion, which therefore means fact, the greatest film ever made, in Steven Spielberg. I
I'm
mean,
not
this,
going to argue with that.
no, this is a guy who was plucked from virtual obscurity after making a couple of films and given Jaws to make. Now, I don't think anybody really knew that Jaws was going to become the absolute like blockbuster monster that it was. This is a guy who made a TV movie called Jewel, which is very good. Nice wee kind of thriller, stroke horror, depending on what kind of gauge you watch it with. Followed up with Sugarland Express, which I believe was his first theatrical film. Technically, his second theatrical film then was Jaws, and this is a guy who's still in his 20s. They gave him millions. They give him this massive summer movie to direct, and everything just goes wrong. It goes notoriously over budget. The actors are drunk on set. The special effects fail. People are arguing. They're actually rewriting the script on set. You know, if you hear about that now, for example, if they're like this, or they're bringing the Man of Steel 5, the films and the production's in trouble, they're rewriting the script on set. This is the kind of stuff that happened in Jaws. Everything that could have went wrong, and he still managed to put it all together and make what is considered one of the greatest films of all time. It was the highest grossing film for the time as well, and it's considered the first summer blockbuster movie. This is a guy who is known for the summer blockbuster films like E.T., Jurassic Park, but can also jump back to his kind of indie-style roots with, granted it's got a massive cast, but Catch Me If You Can is a very low-key film. Schindler's List, you know, it can flip between these massive blockbuster movies to these smaller scale ones with complete ease.
Yeah. And Schindler's List, I think, shows a real talent as well, and that it was something unlike his entire back catalogue at that point, and there's nothing that he's really done since that's like it as well, just in terms of the way it's shot and the visuals. It's one of my favourite films of all time, actually. And the thing is, it almost feels kind of like a low budget indie. I think it doesn't have a blockbuster feel about it, but yeah, no, he's one of the best, isn't he, if not the best? So good choice.
Yeah, an interesting thing with Schindler's List, it came out in the same year as Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that's right. What, 93 is that?
93, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not a kind of case he's flicking between these two films. In the same year, he's like, here's what I can do
Yeah.
with apparent ease. Now, I'm not saying it was, obviously, because a film like Schindler's List being so personal to him must have been very difficult to make. But as you said there, Mary, it's got this very kind of indie feel to it. Compare that to Jurassic Park, which revolutionised special effects.
Yeah.
You know,
And still stands to this day as a film. Like, there's none of the effects in that. And I have great love for Jaws, but the effects are a wee bit dated. But you watch the original Jurassic Park, and the effects to this day completely stand up.
Exactly. I mean, this is also a director that a lot of people like to kind of try and pigeonhole as being the blockbuster guy. You know, these kind of previous films. We've got West Side Story coming up. Before that, Ready Player One. Before that, The Post. Before that, The BFG. Like, he's just so versatile in his styles.
Well, technically, The Post came between the beginning and the end of Ready Player One. They did principal photography in Ready Player One. They had to take so long with the post-production and special effects. He did The Post from beginning to end, and then went back and finished off Ready Player One in between times. That's same sort of idea as I'm doing Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year. It just showed how quickly you can actually turn around a project.
That's incredible.
I know.
And this is also the guy as well that went and did Indiana Jones. Come on. You know,
Are you going to sing the theme music to that as well?
No. I might just get the hat and whip out though.
I mean, whatever's in your bedroom is your business.
Well, that's not just my business. If people put their cars right.
Hands, lightning with my hands, lightning with my hands, lightning with my hands.
So I think we've pretty much knocked another podcast out of the park. Obviously, look at us, we're successful film journos. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on before, not each other, before we wrap up?
Yeah, there was a piece in The Guardian the other day about the film Hobbs and Shaw, where it was reported that no actor basically loses a fight in the film, and it's actually down to contractual reasons. The contracts state that neither of them can basically lose face in any way. they have to basically trade the same number of punches and give as good as it gets. Now, this isn't unique to this film. It's part of the Fast and Furious franchise. There's been previous reports with the likes of Vin Diesel having somebody on set during a fight to make sure that if somebody hits him 6 times, that he is able to get the choreographer to come in and make sure that he gives as good as he gets. I just think this is it's strange, but it's also really, really worrying, because you kind of get an idea that The Rock is kind of a reasonable guy. He's got a very good public persona, and for him to be this sort of petty,
It's really disappointing, isn't it? And to me, it just has, small penis syndrome written all over it. Like, if your masculinity or your image is so fragile that you have to count the number of punches, I mean, the fight choreographers must be just like, for fuck's sake.
I was going to say, regards to like Hobbs and Shaw specifically, have you seen it yet?
Not yet, no.
I went to see it the weekend, and you can actually believe that's not so much. You believe it's almost like method acting in a sense, because of the way the characters compete in the film. There's even like scenes when they're like taking out like 2 separate groups of bad guys and stuff, and they're kind of like trying to outdo each other about who can beat up the most people and stuff like that. But it is a bit kind of sad, isn't it? I mean, if it's like a joke type thing, kind of tongue in cheek.
I don't get the impression that it is.
But if the idea that they're sitting like, no, I must batter more people than you in this film because of whatever reason.
Can you imagine if The Rock actually said that? I must batter more people than you.
Yeah. Well, apparently even like they have to have the same number of punches thrown, even if they're fighting other people, so that it all evens out. But you've got to remember, there's history within Fast and Furious, sort of Vin Diesel and The Rock. Basically, Hobbs and Shaw was created because The Rock didn't want to appear on screen with Vin Diesel, and they wanted to make sure that the franchise went forward. Now, the new Fast and Furious film supposedly won't feature any of The Rock at all, which is a bit sad, because they just don't get on. There's obviously been a very public spat in Instagram with them over the years. He can be as petty as anybody by the looks of things, and it's to the detriment of the film. I know they're not exactly the most serious. They're not regarded as Spielberg prestige productions or anything, but they're fun. But this kind of takes away from it a wee bit. It's sad. It really is.
See if this is the closest The Rock gets to being cancelled. I'm pretty cool with that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Like, sex scandal. Nah, he's a bit petty. Yeah, that's cool.
Petty as in like he labels his lunch in the fridge at work. I mean, it's disappointing, particularly from The Rock, because you do kind of feel like he has that kind of nice guy public image, and it'd be interesting to see then, as a result of these kind of contracts being revealed, does Tom Cruise have this for the Mission Impossibles? Does Keanu Reeves have it for John Wick? It'd be interesting to see if there are other kind of action stars who have that written into their contracts. It would be kind of interesting to find out, because it's sort of to me, it just reeks of fragile masculinity. But I don't really want to say too much about that, given that I'm the only female present here.
No, I mean, I think you've got a fair point of it, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's like historical contracts in films.
Was it not? Was it Tom Cruise? Was it in fact, I think it was Top Gun. He would always. It was like, I don't know if it was in his contract right enough, but he would always be standing on a pavement or something so that Kelly McGillis would look shorter than him, which is not possible because she's like 60 feet tall to his 5 feet tall. But there was a thing about that. He was always having to be on a raised platform in comparison to her, obviously because of the height difference.
Yeah, that was widely reported at the time. I think he learned lessons from that, because he's always cast against females, especially that are smaller than him or roughly about the same height, which is kind of difficult.
Yeah, it is, and especially like, I mean, God, look at his wedding pictures to Katie Holmes. Like, bitch is crouching half a foot because she's a giant compared to him. Do you know it? Stuff like that. I feel it kind of like takes away the magic a little bit. Like, especially for fight sequences, they're supposed to be kind of not fun, but enjoyable and sort of really cinematic. And to think that it comes down to ratios of punches, sad, I think is the word.
Yeah. I mean, there's 3 post-credit scenes in this film, and I sat through them all. I didn't see fight punch counter in the credits,
Maybe
Although
that's not a job title yet.
I could swear both of them do lose a fight in that film.
But against each other.
No, when they fight Idris Elba in the beginning.
But that's plot. That's setting up plot. It doesn't matter if it's
Yeah,
the
but
bad
the
guy.
heroes, they're not going to.
They have to lose the first
otherwise.
fight. They have to lose the first fight against the bad guy in order
Yeah,
to
but
come
To
back
set up,
stronger.
yeah.
I don't. That's a plot device. That's not a contractual thing. I don't think The Rock said to the screenwriter, "I know you've planned to have me die at the end of this film. But don't."
If you know what's good for you.
And the screenwriter's like, "Do you know
When
what?
I run for president, I'll remember that you killed me off in this franchise.
I was planning to have Idris Elba batter both of you and just have the bad guy win. How's that for a fun family summer blockbuster movie? I want my contract to say that I don't lose this fight." So also, I'm not saying these things aren't possibly true, but how much you take it with a pinch of salt as well.
Publicity is publicity. If they can get something in the paper for a film, then they're going to do it. No matter how big the film is, it can always be bigger.
Yeah, it's very true.
And then we're talking about it, so we're just spreading the word even further with our many 2s or 3s of fans out there.
Hey,
Part of me wants to go and see it now to actually try and keep some sort of tally of punches.
the film itself, though, I was underwhelmed by it. I think it tries too hard to be the film it wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a bit like, yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's no Fast and the Furious 5. I just like films with 5 in the title.
I know this is
Obviously,
fine.
Well, if that is us for another successful, outstanding, award-winning, soon-to-be number 1 in iTunes podcast.
Yeah, it's in my contract that I have to be part of something decent.
Do you know what's actually really interesting? Because John faxed me his contract earlier and said he has to get this just a wee bit more airtime than you.
That
Yeah.
sounds about right. Yeah, he does have the better hair, in fairness.
Yeah, and equal numbers of A's and ums, obviously.
He also insists that when I do the audio pod, I put a thumbnail of John.
With his shirt open.
It's not for content, it's just for that thumbnail.
Oh, guys, I'm so glad all the gang's back together. But as I said at the start of this podcast, I'm really hungover. So I'm going to go and get some pizza. It's been lovely talking to you guys. I need to go and die in a corner.
That's all for us. You can, again, as usual, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Moviescramble. Please subscribe, leave a review, even if it's not good. I don't care anymore. Just give us your comments. And check out our reviews, articles, opinion pieces, and all sorts of other fun past podcast episodes. Pictures of John with shirt open at moviescramble.co.uk. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Shazam! Gentlemen!
You have bullet immunity!
I'm bulletproof.
You're dead.
Sorry about your window, but you're welcome for not getting robbed. Oh, hey, what's up? I'm a superhero.